Tonight, a drinking water emergency in the city of Salem, why city councilors are trying to get ahead of a federal project aimed at helping salmon that could clog the city's treatment plant. Plus, a Portland city councilor's new strategy to tackle homelessness in the Rose City, why she says the current plans are confusing. But first, President Trump signs an executive order meant to overhaul the way the U.S. manages homelessness. It's our big story tonight. But first, we continue to follow breaking news tonight. A magnitude 8.7 earthquake off the eastern coast of Russia has prompted a tsunami watch for the entire west coast of the United States. Let's get right to Chief Meteorologist Matt Safino with the latest. Matt.
All right, Blair, thank you very much. As you mentioned, 8.7 magnitude earthquake, and it wasn't onshore, it was offshore, and that's key because it's the offshore earthquakes, the ones that are under the sea floor or happening on the seafloor under the ocean. Those are the ones that have the potential to generate tsunamis. So that's where the earthquake happened at 4:24 our time. As you mentioned, it was an 8.7, which is incredibly strong. A couple of aftershocks there as well off the Kamchatka Peninsula along the coast of Russia. So we have along the west coast here now a tsunami advisory, I believe. This has been upgraded just in the last little bit from a watch to an advisory. So that means that we are expecting at least a minimal tsunami wave or waves. It's not always just one wave. And that also means that the currents along the Oregon coast are likely to get weird and strong and unpredictable. Be aware of that. You can get debris floating around, moving about as well. So folks at the coast, you live at the coast, thinking about taking action now because we are under tsunami advisory there. Tsunami advisory also along the western part of the Aleutian Peninsula. And it's potentially dropped for the coast of Alaska. We'll wait and see and I'll confirm that later on. Down in Hawaii, they're under tsunami warning for the potential for an even bigger tsunami wave here. So again, the Hawaiian Islands, all aspects of the island, not just the north or western shores, can be impacted by tsunami waves as they travel across the Pacific Ocean and eventually impact us here in the United States and in Canada and potentially down to Mexico as well. It takes time for these waves to travel across the thousands of miles of ocean that we have, and you don't really notice them out over the open ocean, but once they reach the shallow water of the coast, that's when they amplify and become big waves. So I know it says peak gust, but that's actually not the map I was looking for here. I had arrival times prepared. They're all between about 11:30 and 11:50 p.m. here on the west coast, and that's what we're expecting. So how does a tsunami happen? Well, again, you have a fault line under the ocean. You get an earthquake as the plates rub together. That earthquake then displaces waters. You get basically a vertical push of seawater going upward because of the movement of the faults down below. Then that wave travels across the ocean, and when it reaches the shallower water, that's when it amplifies and becomes a bigger and potentially damaging wave. Earthquake magnitude, just to go over that for you again, because this was a big one, an 8.7. Usually only get around one a year, and it was close to a 9, right? And those happen only about once every 10 years, equivalent to 33 billion pounds of explosives. That's how much energy was released by that earthquake. Pretty impressive. Do we want to talk about weather at all, Blair, or are we just doing earthquake right now? All right, just earthquake. I'm going to send it back to you. We'll be watching thunderstorms, though, tonight and tomorrow night all around Oregon. Blair?
Okay, Matt, thanks so much. Well, turning now to President Trump's executive order signed late last week, ending crime and disorder on America's streets. It calls for changes in order to make it easier for states and cities to move people living on the street into treatment for mental illness or addiction, and in some cases, forcing people into treatment without their consent. That's the civil commitment process that we've explored in depth here on The Story with our Uncommitted series. The order says, quote, shifting homeless individuals into long-term institutional settings for humane treatment through the appropriate use of civil commitment will restore public order. More on that in a minute. But federal funding will now be shifted away from housing first initiatives. That's the idea, to get homeless people into housing and then offer treatment. The president's order instead prioritizes money for programs that require sobriety and treatment and calls to defund any addiction programs that include, quote, harm reduction. That would be programs that receive federal funding if they offer things like needle exchanges or, frankly, anything the Trump administration considers harm reduction. Their federal dollars are now at risk. It also calls on the president's cabinet members to fast-track federal funding to states and cities that crack down on illegal drug use and homeless encampments. The order comes just a year after the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in favor of Grants Pass, Oregon, allowing cities to punish people for sleeping outside, even if they have nowhere else to go. A majority of justices rejected arguments that anti-camping ordinances violate the Constitution's ban on cruel and unusual punishment. So now that we understand what the order aims to do, how will that impact homeless policy or enforcement here in Oregon? Well, we asked the governor about it yesterday.
So that executive order, as you know, came out on Friday, and it's pretty broad. It's everywhere from how we treat folks who are living outside to law enforcement to behavioral health services. We're still analyzing it. Here's what I would say in general. Here in Oregon, we're putting all of these things together. When someone is moving into shelter, we want to connect them to mental health and addiction services. We are holding folks up to get the services they need. And what I'm hoping from the federal administration, and I don't know if this will happen or not, we need more support. We need dollars to help us do the things we know are working. I don't need someone to come in and tell us you can't do things. What I need them is to be helpful. So I don't know if this executive order is going to be that, but if the president's very serious about this, we need resources to help us do the work we know works.
Okay, it's not clear what the executive order would mean here in Portland either. Today, the mayor's office told us they were still analyzing the order and how it will work with current state law. But let's circle back to that civil commitment side of this, forcing someone into mental health treatment against their will. Numerous KGW investigations have shown that civil commitment has not really been an option in Oregon in recent years, and people with severe mental illness would have to commit a serious crime in order to be forced into treatment. A law was passed earlier this year in Salem to make it easier to force treatment on people with severe mental illness. House Bill 2005 would allow judges to consider past or future behavior in a civil commitment hearing as they assess whether someone is dangerous to themselves or others because of their mental illness. It also includes time limits on how long someone accused of a crime can be held in treatment, changes the rules around who can trigger a civil commitment hearing, and expand areas where residential treatment facilities can be built. The president wants to use that avenue for homeless people who pose a risk to themselves or others, or if someone living on the street cannot care for themselves. How exactly that will take shape in Oregon, again, not clear. But one thing that is clear is that the state has very little space for patients who are civilly committed, or waiting to be committed for that matter. Take a look at data from the Oregon State Hospital. This shows the types of patients they've been taking since the year 2000. The gray line there is civil commitments. More than 400 25 years ago, and now it's less than 50. Taking their place, the blue line, aid and assist patients. Those are criminal defendants who are unable to aid and assist in their own defense, requiring restorative mental health treatment in order to stand trial. 25 years ago, less than 100 of those patients. Well, that has soared to several hundred since. And in case you needed more evidence, we got data showing the number of patients admitted to the Oregon State Hospital between January and June of this year. More than 600 aid and assist patients. Civil commitments, just 21. And it doesn't stop there. As of yesterday, 23 aid and assist patients are waiting to get into the Oregon State Hospital, along with 28 other people waiting to be civilly committed. So, if the president's plan is to round up people on the streets who are mentally ill and force them into treatment here in Oregon, they'll be waiting in line. Or in other words, staying on the streets. All right, let's shift our focus from the federal level here to local politics around the homeless crisis. Portland City Councilor Candace Avalos of District 1 out in East Portland recently introduced what she's calling her unified housing strategy. Okay, she believes there are too many different plans addressing homelessness created by different people with different financial agreements between different government partners, and she's saying it's all getting way too confusing. Her proposed strategy would take the best of all the city's plans and create a single roadmap. Okay, joining me live now to talk about this strategy is Councilor Candace Avalos, who also chairs the Council's Homelessness and Housing Committee. Councilor Avalos, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Okay, let's dive in. When you say there are all these different plans and funding partnerships to address homelessness in Portland, I mean, I don't think you're alone in feeling that way, but walk me through what you're seeing from inside City Hall and how your proposed strategy would simplify things.
Absolutely. So, as the Housing and Homelessness Committee Chair, I have met with dozens of stakeholders, both inside and outside of City Hall, and they all say the same thing. The city lacks a unified vision. We have these scattered efforts, siloed plans, but no real common theory of change. And so, what I'm introducing with the Unified Housing Strategy is clarity. What is Portland's role? What is not our role? How do we move from crisis to housing stability? And this should help us lead where we should be leading, which is housing production, and also partner better with the county and Metro. I think, as you described in the intro, there's a lot of confusion that stems from overlapping responsibilities. And so I'm hoping that this unified housing strategy will fix that.
So when we talk about homelessness in Portland, what do you think is working that the city should keep doing and what should stop or change?
Yeah, I mean, I think right now, the biggest thing that is not working is our lack of clarity on what our role is. We have this IGA or intergovernmental agreement with the county. The county's responsibility is the work of shelters and homelessness and social work, kind of things. Whereas the city's book of business is infrastructure. We need to build the housing that folks that are going to be leaving shelters and hopefully on their path to stability, but they're not going to be able to get there if we don't have somewhere for them to land. So I think what's most important right now for me is that we are focusing on the entire shelter to housing continuum, so that we can continue to move people forward in that continuum.
What do you think of the mayor's plan to address homelessness? We know he's focused on opening emergency shelter beds and day centers. Do you support that approach?
Plan right now really focuses a lot on overnight shelter, but what a lot of folks are asking is what happens during the day, right? And what is the path to housing? So I think that disconnect is exactly why we need this unified housing strategy. Portlanders are tired of seeing disjointed efforts and little progress, and they deserve better, and that's what I'm fighting for.
One of the big shortfalls of, say, any current homeless plan is really tracking outcomes. Under your strategy, what would that piece look like?
Yeah, this is not just another plan, right? This is a roadmap to align the good work that already exists that many people in the city have been doing over the years. So this is setting some metrics, timelines for building housing, advancing zoning reform, and delivering real results. And it also helps us to be bold, like exploring social housing, which we talked about a few months ago, and other new models that are working elsewhere. So this is about coordination, efficiency, and impact, and for us to stop spinning our wheels so that we can start delivering.
Let's talk about Portland's permitting system. We know it's often a barrier for developers. What do you think needs to change when it comes to permitting to build more housing?
Yeah, I mean, on permitting, honestly, some of it is really simple. We want more housing and we need to speed up how we approve it. A lot of what I've heard from developers over the last few months is that those stalls cost dollars, right? The longer that a process takes, these are dollars that keep adding up. And then if those dollars add up and the project no longer pencils, then, a developer is going to abandon that idea. And so we need to better streamline this, make sure that we can get people through the system a lot quicker, and have the metrics that we need to help the city focus on not just how much housing that we can build, but also who we're building it for. That's a really important part of this to me.
And your plan points to improving housing stability for people of color and single moms. How do you plan to do that?
Well, it's important that we follow the data, right? The Portland Housing Bureau has a lot of data that shows that people of color, single moms, seniors, they have the least access to affordable housing. And so really trying to prioritize these groups because they're most at risk for becoming homeless or staying stuck in it. And so that's really the key around all of this, is that we need to have metrics and data that we can measure, and that way we can deliver on that exactly.
And what do you have to say to people who hear about your housing strategy and say it's just more planning, more talking, not enough action?
I understand, and I know that it's really hard for folks to adjust to that. We have a brand new form of government. We've got all these new people, and we have all these big ideas, and we're trying to get our ducks in a row. And I think this is one way for us to do that, especially because we changed the form of government, right? Now we have this executive branch, we have a legislative branch, and a lot of what this UHS is trying to do is to de-silo the work. Just because, we aligned all of our work technically via the org chart and via the charter, that takes, intentional work with the employees, with the leaders to actually see all of those things come into alignment. So I understand that people are frustrated with, the larger feeling that we have plans that we can't execute on, but that is exactly what I am trying to stop that cycle of, is to take all of these plans that are sitting on PDFs that people are doing some work on and they've advanced some of those objectives, but putting them in one place, resetting, realigning what's our theory of change, what do we have capacity to do, what do we want to do, and then put that into actual outcomes.
Okay, Councilor Avalos, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
So talk to us. What do you think about the councilor's plan? Do you support it? Why or why not? Email us the story at kgw.com or call and leave us a voicemail, 503-226-5090. All right, now let's get to some of your thoughts on our big story last night, looking at the finger pointing between the city of Portland and Multnomah County when it comes to safety concerns at the county's central library. We heard from Portland Police about their efforts around the building along Southwest 10th Avenue, and then County Commissioner Megan Moyer joined us live to talk about a recent letter that she sent to the mayor and police chief asking for more to be done around the library. The mayor argues that since it's a county library, the ball is in the county's court to deter drug use and unruly visitors there. If you missed the segment last night, be sure to check it out on the KGW YouTube page. But a viewer named Ryan summed it up, writing, "The simple fact that City of Portland and Multnomah County officials can't present a coherent joint plan to solve a clear issue that speaks volumes about the distance between the two governing bodies. I feel bad for the librarians and staff on the front lines, forced into unsafe situations due to a lack of political leadership and cohesion."
The people that got hired on to the Central Library did not get hired on to do the jobs of the police or the centers that we have for folks that are intoxicated. They're there to be librarians. And who the heck has their back? Looks like nobody. Again, we have the city and the county pointing fingers at one another. I thought when we put in a new city council, I thought when we put in a new mayor, this stuff would stop. You want the support of the citizens in this city. Do your job.
Well, a few of you wrote in with your experiences at the Central Library. Sam said, "I went to the library once since I moved here earlier this year. I saw a man's genitals coming into the entrance. When I walked up the stairs, I could hear porn blasting on a phone. The man at a table had 5 suitcases filled with stuff with him and was taking up an entire table by himself, sleeping. This is not a library. It is a day shelter with books." And we'll end on this one from John. "It's really disheartening to see a place for learning and community to become so mired in criminal and unhealthy activities that keeps away regular library patrons. You cannot imagine children ever visiting the Central Library. For me as a kid, getting to visit my city's Central Library was a formative experience and made me love books and the library." And I'll just add, from my time reporting on this and talking with homeless people who spend time in that library, they tell me it's because they have nowhere else to go. There aren't enough public bathrooms downtown, and when they set up a tent, it gets swept. The mayor says he is working to open more day centers so they have somewhere to go. Well, coming up next on the story, from the Rose City to Oregon's capital city and a drinking water emergency. Salem City Council unanimously approved the move last night, all in an effort to get ahead of a move by a federal agency slated for next fall. We'll explain when the story returns. To Salem now, where City Council voted to take emergency action related to the city's drinking water. Leaders there are trying to get ahead of a federal plan later next year designed to help salmon. But if that happens, the city's primary water source could be affected. Catherine Cook explains.
Absent Councillor Varney.
Aye.
Mayor Julie Hoy.
Aye. Motion passes.
In Salem, City Council members declared an emergency Monday night for its drinking water system. It comes down to a massive drawdown planned for the Detroit Lake Reservoir in the fall of 2026. According to the city, that will stir up sediment built up behind the Detroit Dam, which could clog the Salem treatment plant's filtration systems.
Conditions that are coming for us that we need to get ready for.
The Army Corps of Engineers needs to lower the lake to a level not seen since the dam was first built over 70 years ago. The National Marine Fisheries Service ordered the deep drawdown to try to improve migration for endangered salmon.
There's no legal or scientific reason to do what they're doing.
Some critics of the drawdown suggest it stems from overreach by environmental interests.
We have to handle this in a common sense manner. I am for the tribes and I am for the fish, but only when they will do the full research.
As plans for the deep drawdown move forward, the city is focused on how to mitigate the muddying impact it could have on Salem's primary source of drinking water.
We need to take some actions immediately, and really that is to expand our alternate supply sources.
Declaring the emergency will allow the city to fortify its water treatment system and add several wells to the tune of around $8 million. Salem's current alternative water sources include groundwater wells near the treatment plant and emergency supplies from Kaiser. There's also an aquifer storage and recovery system here beneath Woodmansee Park in South Salem. Those three sources combined can provide 22 million gallons of water a day. But Salem's 200,000 ratepayers use between 24 and 25 million gallons a day.
Even with the wells, if we can get 1.5 million gallons per well out of it, that margin is still really narrow, and if any one of those things goes, it could really be catastrophic for us.
Other cities' water supplies are also impacted by the drawdown. In June, the mayor of Staten and council president sent a letter to the Army Corps of Engineers asking them to reconsider the drawdown. And last year, the cities of Sweet Home and Lebanon filed a lawsuit against the Army Corps of Engineers over a similar drawdown of the Green Peter Reservoir in 2023. They claim the project caused increased turbidity on the South Santiam River and damaged both cities' water treatment systems. The impact of this drawdown remains to be seen.
There is some hope that the North Santiam drawdown will be different. Every river is different.
In Salem, Catherine Cook, KGW News.
And I really appreciate that we
Well, that is the end of our show, folks. Thanks so much for watching. The good stuff is coming your way next. And don't forget, everyone has a story to tell. If you ever miss an episode of The Story at 6:30, we re-air it at 8:30 and 10:30 on our TV app, KGW+, which you can download free right now on Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV. In the meantime, have a great Tuesday night. Stay cool out there. I'll see you right back here tomorrow night at 6:30.